Hey, you see I'm missing VVS's, don't forget about it. You see I'm dripping VVS, they can't forget about it. No, I'm facing on a bitch.
What is the deal, beautiful people? It's your boy Ramon. This is a cross-channel video, and you will see this on Lifestyles Defined, which is our technology channel, and then again on Ignorant Gamers, which is our gaming channel. So let's talk Xbox One. Yeah, yes, Xbox One X to be specific, which was the artist formerly known as Project Scorpio, and they changed the name, and I don't have a problem with that. I feel like the name is fine. I feel like it goes a long way into fitting into the family of X things. There's actually a pretty funny video out there of Phil Spencer, who is the lead of the Xbox division over at Microsoft, talking about how he still makes that mistake calling it Scorpio, and he's still attached to that name, and how much of a struggle it was because they had already used all these other names like Elite and S and all that stuff. So nonetheless, what is the deal about the Xbox One S? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it worthless? I've got a ton of messages about this guy. You guys been reaching out. I know Snow's done some coverage over on IGZ, and a lot of you guys been asking for my thoughts. And I mean, to be honest with you, I don't see how this thing is anywhere close to a disappointment. I've been hearing some people say it's not impressive, it's disappointing, it's pointless. I don't really understand the perspective these people have. And I try to listen, and I just, people can't. It's like they're 2-year-olds. Do you want some vegetables? No. Well, why not? No. Okay, I get it. You don't want it, but why don't you want it? No. Like, it's quite frustrating to see that type of shit again and again and again. So what am I talking about? With the first of all, when they announced this thing last year, I'm just angling the mic a little bit. When they announced this thing last year, I immediately thought this guy was gonna retail for about $700. And take everything into account, the specs, where they were shooting for this thing to compete, and the type of performance it was getting. You know, they were going after sort of the entry to medium tier PC gaming market. And I didn't see how that would have been possible for anything less than $700. In fact, I was hoping, I was wishing and praying that it would be $700 and not something like $1,000. And here it is, full shocker to me. This thing cost $500. Snow hit it right on the head. That was his price range. Now, let's talk about the price of this, and I see a lot of uproar about the price, and people saying, oh my god, it's impressive, but it's expensive. Like, I don't get what people think is expensive. So point number one, when the original Xbox came out, it wasn't being slaughtered in sales. It was just behind Sony. The slaughtering didn't yet begin for about a year after, and that had nothing to do with the fact that the Xbox was sold with the Kinect, or was sold at $500, because a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people, especially the Xbox fans, understood that extra $100 was going for the Kinect, which we no longer use around here. I do, but Microsoft couldn't care less about it. So for me, you know, the PlayStation got that early jump because they were cheaper, and then later on, a year later, you started to come out and say, not only is it cheaper, but it's more powerful. What the hell is the point of the Xbox, right? And that's where this whole exclusive thing came into play. But nonetheless, the $100 premium that the Xbox One had over the PlayStation really wasn't that big of a deal early on, and I think there's and even to this day, I think the $500 price point is fine. I think Sony was just out of their minds bonkers and doing gamers a favor and selling the PS4 at $400. That was dope. And now here we go with minus the Kinect. You're looking at an Xbox One X with, I don't know, 3-4 times the performance for the same price of the original Xbox. How is that not a win? I just don't understand how people say, oh, it's expensive. First of all, and second of all, let's go back to the competition, which is the PlayStation 4 Pro. I think Sony did a good job with the PlayStation 4 Pro. I think it was, had we given the console, the PS3 and the Xbox 360 another year, the PlayStation Pro, like Snow said oftentimes, would have been the PlayStation that was to be delivered. And I think the PlayStation Pro is dope. I got no beef with it. Now, when you look at the specs of what the Xbox One S is offering, it sort of slaughters the PlayStation 4 Pro for only $100 more. I don't get it. So something that's literally twice the performance is not twice the price. And again, people find a way to see this as a bad thing. Okay. And third, I like the trend that happened here, and I like what both companies did. And I'm very proud of Microsoft for doing this, especially. The first one was $500 and this one is $500. And we saw that with Sony, right? I think Sony sort of threw the gauntlet down when they said, and yeah, it's so much better and yada yada yada, and it's $400, the price you paid for the original one. I thought that was dope. So those 3 points is sort of in my mind why this thing isn't anywhere close to expensive. In fact, it is a bargain for what it offers and the performance that you get from this thing. Now then, let's talk about performance. And I'm not going to get into the teraflop shit. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a graphic designer. That shit don't mean anything to me. I understand it was just it was not only a marketing term it became, because one person came out and said I have 1.5 and the other one came out and said I have 2.4 and not 5.6 and 8.9 and here we go with the dumb shit that didn't need to be. But nonetheless, the teraflops I think is, or the performance in general, I think it's amazing. If you look at, and this is, I keep reverting back to Sony with the PS4 Pro because I felt like Sony did a really good job on what they were offering with that guy. So if you look back at Sony had something like what was it, 5 or 6 usable gigabytes of RAM, which was so much more than the original PlayStation had and the original Xbox One. And then Microsoft is sort of doing the same thing here. In fact, there is another gig of RAM available to the developers over what Sony's offering, so that says something there. And then the GPU, of course, is in a league of its own. So all of this horsepower, impressive horsepower, PC-like horsepower, right? What is the point here? What is Microsoft telling us? Well, there's two things really. One of them is sort of hidden, and I feel like if you're a real gamer, if you care about, if you're in the comment sections arguing about specs and arguing about teraflops and gigs and floating, all that dumb shit, then this is something I shouldn't have to explain to you. But again, some people are off the fucking rail and they don't seem to be thinking correctly. Now, the first is 4K. Microsoft was targeting 4K with this guy, and the way they went about it, I thought was particularly intelligent. They had already had all this data from the PC world. They had all of this data. They could lean on their third-party developers. They could lean on the OEMs of the graphics cards. They could lean on the raw data that Windows 10 collects. And they said, okay, what kind of hardware is going to be required to make a machine capable of hitting 4K at 60 frames a second? for me, the glory in that question was always the 60 frames a second. It said to me, yes, that the gaming industry is finally, not the gaming industry, outside of the PC industry, acknowledging the fact that it's the frames per second that makes the difference in the experience, not the resolution. And I thought that was super dope. And that's, you know, they compiled all that data and they ended up at what they chose, which is why they're touting it as the most powerful console ever and blah, 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 blah. You know, they had to land in some firm PC territory to get that 4K resolution at 60 frames a second. And I applaud them for doing the homework and thinking of that angle on how to attack and how to get to the goal. The second part of this that I feel remains hidden, and this is something I'll touch on toward the end of the video. This is the promised rock solid 60 frames a second we were supposed to get with the original Xbox One on a 1080p display. Here's the thing. So even though I'm not quite ready to buy a 4K TV because I don't think any of them are worthwhile in the gaming world yet, I have a plasma, so you make of that conversation what you will. The benefit for me to buy the Xbox One S, even with a TV that is not 4K, is I'm going to get 1, downsampling, and 2, rock solid frame rate. That alone makes it worth it. And you know, kudos to again Sony, because Sony was implementing the same thing on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and it worked a little differently, but nonetheless it's there. And here goes Microsoft, and they're doing the same thing. So I think this is super dope. I think for someone who doesn't have the latest and greatest, to be able to get a benefit out of it is pretty dope. Now, what I wanted to touch on, I guess I'll touch on it now, wait to the end of the video, is these guys, both Sony and Microsoft, mid-console, because this is what everyone's calling it, mid-console generation, are now delivering what they promised. We were promised games at 60 frames a second and they never hit it. So this is this is part of that world now, and I mean, I guess better late than never, but god damn it, guys, I gotta spend more money to get there. But nonetheless, I think the big problem everyone's been having with the Xbox One S is they're saying, or they've proved that there are some shortcuts. In fact, the same shortcuts that Sony has been using, or developers have been using on the PlayStation 4 to sort of upscale or to be able to manage a 4K resolution, some of the games on the Xbox are doing the same thing. And there's a lot of talk of, well, again, why, even though it's that powerful, why should we spend the extra $100 when you're using the same thing and the same techniques and it's not true or native 4K? So this, I think, is not much of a conversation. I feel like people just aren't paying attention. First of all, if you look back to the PlayStation 3 with the cell processor versus whatever it was in the Xbox 360, the cell processor almost never showed its power unless it was a Sony developed game. Pay attention to that. So here, you know, in the current generation with the Xbox One versus the PlayStation 4 argument, everyone's quick to point out the Xbox is weak, the Xbox is weak. And then they look at these cross-platform games, which obviously run better on the PlayStation because it is a stronger system. And oh, the Xbox is weak, the Xbox is weak. And then you see games like Forza, which hit the 1080p 60 frames a second. You go, whoa, I guess it is possible? Huh. This is the same thing that I'm seeing over here on the Xbox One X, and it hasn't even come out. People are arguing that Microsoft is lying. They're saying all games will be 4K, and I don't ever remember reading that. In fact, what they said was games are in fact The hardware is in fact capable of running games at 4K 60 frames a second, but it's up to the developer. They're not going to tell the developer what to prioritize, graphic fidelity, frames per second. And they're not going to do it. And the developer achieves whatever spec or benchmark they want, how they achieve it. And checker box rendering is one of those things, right? So if you look at that and you say, well, show me a game that's really true 4K and 60 frames a second. And that was actually the first game that they showed, which was Forza. Going back to my point, the developers won't know how to do everything right now out of the box, but it can be done, which in my mind makes it okay for Microsoft to say the first true 4K console. Right? And now if we throw Sony in the mix there, we haven't seen any real, I don't expect any of these cross-platform games to not include checkerboard rendering. I think on the PlayStation, at its power spec, it's sort of required to at least play in the ball field, but I expect like Uncharted or something to come out and blow minds. And the real test here is, so we know there's no checkerbox rendering in the Forza. If there's checkerbox rendering in the Uncharted and that's Sony and they know how to do it, well then the whole true 4K thing is true, right? So we'll have to wait for that. Overall, I felt pretty impressed with what the Scorpio was. I don't think it's expensive. I don't think Microsoft lied about 4K. I'm excited to actually see the performance and the downsampling, how much sharper the downsampling is on 1080p. And $500, I think that's a hell of a price, man. And it comes down to people just hating Microsoft, right? Because there's all these people, and you guys know, some of you are probably watching this video, you're in the comments arguing about power. Now what do you do with yourself? How much bridges are you gonna find to jump off, right? Because what do you do now? Well, the Xbox One X is the most powerful. You said power was important. No, but where are the games? Right? And then the games are gonna come out, and then by then you're gonna say some dumb shit like, I don't like black consoles in my house. So I think it's one of the things where it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's Microsoft. People love to hate fucking Microsoft. Anyway, my name is Ramon. I hope you guys liked the video. Like it, subscribe. If you don't like it, hit the thumbs down button. Fuck you, I'll find you. Subscribe to the channel. Got plenty more coming. Join the comment section down below. I'm sure it's gonna be lit in a minute. I'm out of here. Peace. If I had to describe Lifestyles Defined, I would say it is a dream come true to have a platform where we can talk about the things that we love and we can share with people who also love the things we love the way we love, and just have conversations that matter and go back and forth and grow as a community. It's been a pleasure. It's been a dream, and I just want to thank everyone that's involved for rocking out with us.